In this video, I'll provide an introduction to prototyping. By the end of this session, it is expected that you will understand what prototyping is and the role that prototypes play in the design process, understand how prototypes differ by type and purpose, understand the factors to consider when deciding what to prototype, and understand the approach and mindset to prototyping to ensure that prototypes are productive in the design process. There are two parts to this video. In part 1, I'll talk about what prototyping is and what roles prototypes have. In part 2, I'll talk about different types of prototypes and the approach we can take when creating them. Part 1, what is prototyping? Prototyping and prototypes are a somewhat difficult concept to define because prototyping covers a range of activity and prototypes can take a number of forms. Broadly speaking, prototyping is the action or process of giving tangible form to a design idea. And a prototype can be anything tangible that represents and lets us explore an idea to experience it, to evaluate it, and to progress it. When you think of the term prototype, you might think of something like this: electronics, complexity, technical skill, functionality, and similar ideas. And yes, these are all elements that are associated with prototyping. But the concept of prototyping is actually much broader. Prototypes can be simple, such as made from paper, and they can be very complex, implementing digital technology and functionality, and they can be everything in between. It is also important to recognize that anything can be prototyped. As Tim Brown explains, the rules of prototyping also apply for non-physical challenges, such as services, virtual experiences, or even organizational systems. This concept that anything can be prototyped is an important mindset for design thinking, which I'll expand on later in this video. Herbert Simon once wrote that everybody designs who devises courses of action aimed at changing existing situations into preferred ones. In this process of designing preferred situations, people designing are concerned with questions of what might be and what should be. Answering such forward-looking questions requires both problem-solving and problem-setting. I'll unpack both of these concepts. Problem-solving is likely a familiar concept. Going from problem to solution requires problem-solving. In a design project, we usually have a problem with various requirements. Prototyping is a way of designing solutions to such problems to meet the requirements. We externalize our ideas, put them in the world, we test them, and we see if they work. They usually don't work the first time, so we integrate our learnings into the next iteration and try again. Problem setting is used to establish the design requirements that we need for effective problem solving. Through problem setting, we gain an understanding of a problem, which allows us to better design for it. The process of prototyping and testing generates a lot of information. The information gained when prototypes work, and when they fail, feeds back into the design problem and improves our understanding of it. This might add requirements to the problem, reframe the problem slightly, or change it entirely. We can contextualize these ideas of problem solving and problem setting relative to the design thinking process. The information generated by prototyping can reveal more about the problem space, what I have just described as problem setting. This helps us to better define the problem and enables more purposeful ideation. Prototypes are also situated in problem space. It's representations of ideas intended to solve problems that we can then test and assess. Each prototype gets us a little closer to solving the problem. Now that I've talked about some high-level ideas about what prototypes are and what they do, it's time to talk more specifically about some roles of prototypes. I've identified 3 broad roles which each have some granularity to them. Prototypes are used to explore. Because prototyping is a process of externalizing our ideas into something tangible, they are powerful tools for exploration and generating inspiration. Exploratory prototyping generates lots of information that improves understanding of a problem and can inspire new ideas. When we create multiple prototypes, these can be used to compare alternative ideas and provide direction as to where to take the project next. Prototypes are used to test. Prototyping and testing go hand in hand. Once we have created a prototype, testing is usually the next step. This involves getting other people to view it and experience it. This could be people in the project team, or it can be the intended end users of the solution being prototyped. The feedback and information generated from this process of testing informs design iterations and how to improve the solution being developed. When prototypes are quite advanced, this testing process is critical for validation. Testing ensures that a design is fit for purpose when it goes out into the world for use. Prototypes are also used for implementation. This involves making sure the design is viable by verifying the different parts of the design. Then third, prototypes are used to communicate. Ideas in our head are not that effective for communication. This changes when they are prototyped and made tangible. This is why prototypes are great for communication. They allow other people to see what it is, experience it, and understand it. Communication ranges from visual appearance to functionality. So prototypes help people understand what a solution looks like, how it works, and to visualize how it could be implemented. What exactly is communicated will depend on the stage of the project. But regardless, communication is important to ensure a solution is accepted by the intended audience at each stage of the project development. In this next part of the video, I'll talk about types of prototypes. Importantly, this involves the level of input to apply when creating prototypes to ensure they achieve their purpose and so that they're efficient in doing so. One way to consider the type of a prototype is fidelity. Fidelity refers to the exactness of how a prototype is created. We can consider prototypes as either low fidelity and high fidelity. Low fidelity prototypes are usually simple, early stage representations of a product or system. They are typically positioned early on in the design process, where it is advantageous to prototype ideas quickly and cheaply, and to not allocate too many resources and time. Because of their simplicity and low cost, they also tend to be low in detail and resolution, which allows them to be easily modified. Low fidelity prototypes are valuable for rapid iteration and collaboration, as they allow designers and stakeholders to explore ideas without significant time or resource investment. High-fidelity prototypes, on the other hand, tend to be more complex and detailed representations of a product or system, which focuses on functionality, interaction, and appearance. They more closely resemble the final design, and therefore they're more costly and require greater investment of time to make. For these reasons, they're usually positioned towards the end of the design process, where many of the issues have already been addressed, probably by low-fidelity prototypes. At this stage of the design process, high-fidelity prototypes allow for effective testing of specific aspects of the design to gain precise feedback. Another way to distinguish prototypes is their purpose. Looks-like prototypes focus on visual and physical appearance. They may represent a refined version of the product or system, but they do not prioritize function or interaction. Depending on what is being prototyped, looks-like prototypes could include a visual representation of a screen or interface. Various visual and physical properties such as materials, colors, size, shape, and style can be represented for feedback. They can be used to test aesthetics as well as usability, such as if the visual representation is easy to understand. Works like prototypes focus on functionality and interaction. They may not look like the eventual product or system, but their functionality enables testing of usability, interaction, and usefulness. Such functionality makes them very useful for testing with people to get feedback on functional qualities of the product or system. Although I've presented these different types of prototypes as individual concepts, it's important to recognize that these characteristics can be mixed. This is because prototypes are made at all different stages of the design process for many different purposes. For example, early on you may be exploring works-like prototypes at low fidelity. At the same time, you may explore various looks-like prototypes to develop the visual and aesthetic qualities of the design. As the design process progresses, prototypes may be developed at a higher fidelity incorporating both looks-like and works-like characteristics. This is because the visual and the functional need to be explored together eventually. When deciding the type of prototype to create, consider: what is the purpose of the prototype? What questions do you want to answer with the prototype? When is the prototype being made during the design process? Who is the prototype for? Is it for internal use, or is it for users, or is it for business partners? How precise does the prototype need to be? Considering the questions on the previous slide are important because every project is unique and every prototype should be different to address the specific project requirements. Because of this, there is not a fixed way to prototype, but there is a suggested mindset to adopt for your prototyping approach. Be selective. It is not possible to prototype everything. We just don't have time. Being selective ensures that each prototype provides valuable input to the project without wasting time. Prototype early, quick, and often. Prototypes will quickly let you know if an idea will work or if it won't. If we prototype early and quickly, then we can get answers and information we need early on and we can move on. Prototypes are disposable. Don't get too attached to prototypes. They are intended as tools in the design process. When a prototype has achieved its purpose, move on to the next iteration. Do just enough. This is an important concept and it relates to the figure on the right. We want to spend just enough time on a prototype so that it is convincing and achieves its purpose. If we do more than this, then it is wasted time. And less than this, well, it may not be effective. Thank you for watching this video. It has provided an introduction to prototyping and equipped you with foundational knowledge on what prototypes are, the different types and purposes of prototypes that can be created, and how you can approach prototyping with a productive mindset in the design process.